Hey guys, Andre from High Performance Academy here. Welcome to our first webinar for 2020. So we've been away on holiday, as have most of you, and we've just got back to High Performance Academy this week, and I just thought I'd fill you in on what's been going on over the break. And for us, for our webinars at least, it was a bit of an extended break because Jono and I headed off to Indianapolis in December for the PRI show. We shot some really interesting content there, and we'll be releasing that over the coming weeks and probably the coming months. So some really cool stuff to come out of it. Actually, I wanted to get started by showing you one of the standouts for me at the show, and there was a lot of standouts, but this one was particularly cool. So we head across to my laptop screen, and this is one that got my attention. It was a custom full billet engine based on the Cummins diesel engine block, I should say. The guy that we were talking to was Drew from D&J Precision Machine, and Drew is basically redesigned the entire Cummins block in order to be reliable at the sort of power levels they're seeing in motorsport use. So I'll just cycle through some of these photos from our Instagram. Of course, if you want to have a better look, check out our Instagram and you can look at your leisure. So every single component here was redesigned from the ground up. I'll actually go back and start with, obviously we've got the billet alloy block here that we can see. In particular, what Drew found is that with the cast iron factory Cummins block, they were seeing failures between something like 1200 and 1600 horsepower. They were aiming for in excess of 3000, so obviously a long way away from the mark. In particular, while it's not that easy to see in this shot, there is some really intricate webbing design in order to basically provide additional strength without unduly increasing the mass in the engine block. Other interesting things, because of course when you're designing a billet block, you really have complete design freedom. So basically they extended the block to allow a more favourable rod to stroke ratio. Given that these engines in stock form are rev limited somewhere in the region of maybe 3,500 to 4,000 RPM, some of these competition engines are running all the way up to 8,000 RPM. So the rod to stroke ratio at higher RPM does play a really big part in it. As well as the block, the cylinder head is also completely manufactured from billet, again allowing a redesign of all of those components, favouring a motorsport application. So the other aspect here which we can see is this custom plenum chamber. The plenum has been designed, again you can see that sort of ribbing in the design, designed to withstand up to 200 PSI. So this is really where the diesel engines are completely different from petrol engines, gasoline engines. We don't tend to see or hear of too many people running those sorts of boost numbers. In fact, anything north of 100 PSI is pretty rare, although not completely unheard of in gasoline engine tuning. Now, there are a couple of caveats around this though. If we head back, probably someone eagle-eyed is going to say, well, this is only fitted with a single Garrett turbocharger, so clearly we're not going to be able to see anything like 200 PSI from this engine combination. And yeah, fair enough. This is really designed to support the compound turbocharger setup, where we get the benefit of boost multiplication essentially, so we can have 2 or maybe 3 turbochargers, each running basically in the meat of their efficiency and essentially multiplying the pressure ratio increase as we get into the engine. That's where we're likely to see these engines making sort of in the vicinity of 200 PSI in the actual inlet manifold. However, this one is no slouch, despite the fact it is running a single turbocharger. In order to get it up to the 3,000 odd horsepower mark, this is running a huge amount of nitrous. So a little hard to see here, but we've got a nitrous express nitrous system. So these are actually individually, these are a normal nitrous wet direct port nozzle. So typically these would be used in a gasoline engine where they support both fuel and nitrous flow. However, that doesn't really work in a diesel engine. The diesel fuel is injected directly into the cylinder. So instead, this is actually set up as a 2-stage system. So both of the jets are delivering nitrous. There's no fuel delivered through those nitrous jets, and it just allows a more tapered or tailored delivery of that additional power from the nitrous. Obviously, if you brought in 1,000 horsepower worth of nitrous in one hit, that's a huge instantaneous increase in the cylinder pressure and engine torque. So not exactly that easy to manage. And here underneath that inlet manifold, we can see the two rails with the distribution of that nitrous. Also visible in this shot, we can see we've got a dry sump system here, and that probably gives you a slightly better view as well of the design of the engine block with those ribs that I mentioned to make sure that the engine is going to be reliable. Now, at the point we actually talked to Drew at the PRI show, they'd only done some preliminary testing on the engine. They'd only had it up to somewhere in the region of about 1,600 horsepower, and after the PRI show, they headed back to the dyno straight away, and Drew sent me a message about 3 or 4 days later, and there's a video that he shared with me of the engine running out to 3,200 horsepower, 3,214 horsepower I think to be exact. So fair to say that his design was a success. So we've got a tech tour of that engine that we shot with Drew, as well as another tech tour we shot with Drew, an interview about diesel engine tuning. So those will be coming out in the not too distant future. Those who have been following our exploits with our Toyota 86 with the 450 horsepower 1UZFE V8 will know that we've been having our fair share, maybe more than our fair share of problems with axle reliability, to the point where the last round of our endurance racing series, we ended up with a DNF 7 minutes from the finish while we were running first in class because one of the axles broke. So that was a stock axle. We've been backwards and forwards between stock axles and Driveshaft Shop axles, which we haven't really been having a lot of success with. What we did basically fairly early on when we took delivery of that car, we ordered a set of Driveshaft Shop 1,000 horsepower axles. These are a much bigger axle. They're made out of a much stronger material, 300M. They use a larger CV to the point where the wheel bearing in the outer hub actually needs to be replaced to take a larger spline. So that's the outer CV here, and if you haven't already guessed the fact that the outer CV is not currently attached to the axle as a hint as to what I'm going to be talking about. So when we first received these axles, we put them in and we tried racing the car a couple of times, and what we ended up having problems with initially was the inner CVs actually popping out of the LSD center. What we found was that the bars, the axles themselves, were actually about 20 millimeters too short. So basically there was a lot of tension trying to pull the inner CVs out of the LSD center, and of course when that happens they end up leaking oil out of the LSD diff and straight onto the exhaust, and not really a good look for us. Also not great for long-term reliability when all of your diff oil is being poured out of the diff. So in the last round we basically had no option but to revert to stock axles, and unfortunately that's where our failure occurred. We just about got to the end of the race, but not quite. So in the meantime, we were going backwards and forwards with Driveshaft Shop in the US, getting a set of bars to fit the inner and outer CVs that were the correct length, and we got those delivered and fitted them to the car. We've probably done about 30 laps in the car since those were fitted, and on the weekend I took the car to the track, and I think I did about 10 laps. Came down the start-finish straight at Highlands Motorsport Park, and ended up with a bang as I shifted from third into fourth gear, which was the cage from the outer CV on the left hand side breaking in half. So we'll get that under our overhead shot here, and this is the little cage. It should look something like that. It sits inside the CV itself, and we have this little section here which sits inside of it, and basically there's a set of ball bearings that sit in there allowing the articulation and movement of the CV. So yeah, not particularly impressed at this point. We haven't actually figured out exactly what's going on or why we're having so much trouble with these. At the moment, we've got some information that we've sent over to Driveshaft Shop to try and shine some light on what's going on. I feel with barely 450 horsepower in a car that is fitted with a relatively small slick, it's also not particularly heavy. I feel that we should be able to get on top of some reliability with our axles, and certainly if that had happened in another race we'd have been pretty disappointed. So yeah, watch this space. We'll figure out exactly what's going on there, hopefully, and get it back up and running. We do have a race in 2 weekends' time, so we're going to need some solutions reasonably quickly, safe to say. Fortunately, the damage was relatively contained to just that cage for the outer CV. There's no actual damage to the axle itself. There's no actual damage to the outer CV, so it should be a case of being able to replace those components relatively easily, but of course we want to get to the bottom of what's causing that, because otherwise likely it's going to just happen again. Now, I just want to introduce you to something that we're super excited about. This is something that we've been working on for the last half of 2019, and we managed to get this project finished and our first course out just before we closed down for Christmas. So just to rewind a little bit, and for those who are long-term High Performance Academy followers, you may remember that in our very early days, we actually teamed up with Nigel Petrie from Engineered to Slide over in Melbourne, Australia. For those who are following us from the US market, you may not be aware of Nigel. If you're not, we'll jump across to my laptop screen. Here's a shot of what we were in Australia for back 6 or 7 years ago. So this is Nigel's custom tube frame Toyota Hilux drift truck. So it is fitted with a Nissan SR20 DET, and basically Nigel is a self-taught motorsport fabricator. He built that entire chassis, the entire car, completely single-handedly. Basically the wiring that we did and the tuning were the only things that he didn't personally do. And along the course of, I think, the 5 years it took him to build this, obviously he developed his skills and learned a lot about the art of motorsport fabrication. The car is an absolute work of art, and because of this and Nigel's passion that he puts into fabrication, he's got a massive following. And of course, he's got a lot of people that have been asking along the way for more information about motorsport fabrication, how to get started. Kind of a little bit like tuning, wiring, and engine building that we cover here at High Performance Academy. Motorsport fabrication is one of those sort of skills, one of those jobs where there isn't a huge amount of information out there for the average home enthusiast that maybe wants to fabricate some parts for their race car, maybe modify some existing parts for their race car, but isn't necessarily going down the path of maybe an apprenticeship as a fitter, turner, or a welder. Just wants to learn for their own satisfaction and their own entertainment. So what we've done is we have teamed up with Nigel, and we have just launched if I can find it, yeah, there we go. We've just launched the ETS Motorsport Fabrication School. So this is the website, and yes, if you are thinking it looks a little bit similar to the High Performance Academy website, yeah, absolutely, 100%. This is exactly the same as our High Performance Academy platform, also, strangely enough, the Racecraft platform as well. However, in the ETS Motorsport Fabrication website, we are going to be covering motorsport fabrication courses. So in this instance, we are basically providing the technical content, the technical side of the business, and Nigel is the man in front of the camera. He's the one with the skills after all. I definitely would not call myself a fabricator. So if you are interested in checking that out, you can go to etsfab.com, and the first course that we have available, this is the course that we launched just before Christmas, is the Motorsport Fabrication Fundamentals course. This will teach you, as its name implies, all of the fundamentals behind motorsport fabrication. You'll learn about all of the tools, all of the techniques, the materials that we'll use. Nigel also shows you some practical skills that you're going to want to pick up if you want to learn about motorsport fabrication. And there's also a couple of worked examples where he'll take you through, for example, building a TIG welding bench as well. So something actually useful for your own application at home. So that course is available right now on etsfab.com for $129 US. So if you are interested, please go ahead and check that out. We've got some really exciting material coming out for ETS Fab this year. Nigel is currently working on a MIG and TIG welding course. We've also got courses planned on roll cage design and construction, exhaust header design and construction, exhaust system construction, how to mount race seats and harnesses, all of those sorts of things that I know a lot of enthusiasts want to learn about but really struggle to get that information. And while we're at it as well, we have also launched an ETS Motorsport Fabrication Instagram account, which is ETS Fab, so please go ahead and give ETS Fab a follow. Nigel is manning that account, and as we scroll through here, you can see he's posting up a lot of interesting content, so kind of a little bit like our HPA account. These posts are designed to be educational, so even if you've got no intention of ever purchasing a course from ETS Fab, go ahead and check it out, because I guarantee you're going to end up learning something. Right, talking about courses, I just want to cover off briefly, seeing as we are now at the start of 2020, what we have got planned for our course production. And we've had a pretty busy year last year in 2019. We've got a lot more planned, if I can just find where I was supposed to be. So we'll head back across to my laptop screen. And for those who have been following us for a while, you'll know that we do have our Diesel Tuning Fundamentals course out. We have been trying very hard to follow that up with our practical diesel tuning course. We've had a lot of people asking about that, and the truck that we've got here on the screen in front of us is our 2018 Chevy Silverado with the L5P 6.6 litre Duramax diesel turbo engine. So we purchased this as a course development vehicle, and we're also going to be using this for some webinars as we get further into the diesel tuning. We actually ended up deciding to partner with Nick from DuramaxTuner over in the US. The reason for this is that our market is predominantly asking for information on tuning US based trucks. Based here in Queenstown, sadly, we don't actually get access to very many of these vehicles, so it makes it really hard for us to produce quality course content on a lot of different models. So particularly the Duramax, the Cummins, the Powerstroke, obviously those are the three key ones in that US market. So we partnered with Nick from DuramaxTuner, who's got an exceptionally good name for the work that he does, providing tunes for his customers, also modifying trucks. So we actually flew over to New Zealand, and he filmed the course here in our workshop. He has been filming back on his dyno in the US. We're just wrapping that up now. The filming is complete. Jono's just been busy doing some editing, so we're hoping we are a few weeks away from launching that course. It's going to be perfect for any of you who want to learn how to make changes to your diesel engines, and it is really powerful. It's actually quite surprising what is possible with some of these late model common rail diesel engines. As a case in point, the Silverado that we've got here, in stock form, off the top of my head, I think they are rated at something like 445 horsepower flywheel. So this truck of ours is 100% mechanically stock standard. There are no modified parts on it other than an unlocked ECU, and with one of Nick's tunes in it, it now puts down 560 wheel horsepower on our dyno, our Pro Hub mainline dyno. Understandably, a fairly large increase over that 445 horsepower standard operating point. Now, the key thing to understand here as well is it's not just about making power, particularly with late model diesel engines. We also need to consider emissions compliance. It's becoming a really big aspect, particularly if you are in the US and you want to keep the EPA happy. So this particular truck still retains all of its emissions equipment, including EGR and DPF. And yes, I know some of you will probably be thinking to yourself, well, those parts are a real hassle. There are reliability problems, there's maintenance problems, there's cost involved. 100% I don't disagree. However, sadly, if you want to keep an emissions legal truck or emissions legal diesel vehicle, these are the parts that we're stuck with, so we need to learn to work with them. And when it comes to an aftermarket tune for an emissions equipped truck, we do need to be very mindful, because if you just add a lot of additional fuel into the calibration, yes, you're going to make a lot more power, but what you're going to end up doing is creating a lot more particulate matter in the exhaust. That then needs to be filtered out by the DPF or diesel particulate filter. You're going to end up filling that DPF very quickly. At best, you're going to end up with the truck going through continuous regens, which is going to be costly because that kills your fuel economy. At worst, you can actually end up blocking that DPF and need to have it replaced, which again is quite expensive. So that course, as I say, hopefully going to be out in the next few weeks. The next one that I'm really excited about, just to switch my hat over again for a moment here to our racecraft project. So we are developing a data analysis course for racecraft. So this is something I'm really personally very passionate about, given that I have been into motorsport for my entire career, initially karting and circuit racing and hill climbs, then moving further into drag racing, and then more lately coming back to circuit racing. Data has always been a key aspect for improving whatever form of motorsport I've been into at the time. And one of my favorite quotes is that without data, all you've got is an opinion. So getting solid data and knowing exactly what the car and what the driver and what the engine has been doing is really important to then be able to analyze that at a later point in the comfort of the pits, decide what changes to make, and then assess whether those changes have gone in the correct direction. Now, personally, in most of our vehicles that we've got here, we are running a Motec data analysis package. So I'll just jump across to my laptop screen. I just want to really quickly, briefly go over this. I'll tell you how you can find out more in a second if you are interested in learning more. So this is some data that we've collected from our own car at the last round of the Endurance Racing Championship at a track called Ruapuna up in Christchurch. So this is 2 laps overlaid, and this is really one of the most valuable points of data analysis. So we've got all our channels here at the top. We've got our engine RPM. The grey trace is the overlay trace. The coloured trace, the solid coloured trace, is our main trace. And below this, we've got our wheel speed. At the moment, we're just looking at front left wheel speed here. And we've got our throttle pedal position, so we can see what the driver's doing. We've got our steering angle, and then also we've got our G-force, both latitudinal and longitudinal. There's a lot of information there. We've also got a track map out here on the right-hand side, so we can see whereabouts the car was on the track. Now, without trying to get too deep into this, what I wanted to show you here is just why I think this is so powerful, is we can bring up, when we've got 2 laps like this, a channel called variance. So press F3, that brings that up on the Motec data analysis package. And we've got this variance channel here. What this instantly shows us is the difference in time between the 2 laps, or basically where the driver is faster or where the driver is slower. So instantly what we can see then is where we've got the ability to make up time. This is great if you're overlaying your own laps and you've maybe made a small driving change, maybe a different line or a different braking point through a particular section of the track. Where the real power comes in though is if you put a professional driver in the car, or maybe a driving coach, get them to produce a reference lap, and then straight away you can compare yourself using this variance channel to the professional driver and get a feel for whereabouts you're losing the most time. So that's all well and good. I do know that the Motec analysis package is pretty expensive. You're going to need a Motec dash. Generally, you're probably going to be looking for a package somewhere probably in the region of about $3,000 US, maybe a little bit less, but that's probably around about your starting point. And I know straight away that puts off a lot of the club level home enthusiasts. Maybe you're only doing a track day maybe once or twice a year, or even maybe you've got a relatively cheap club level car and you are competing in a series. That might be about basically your entire budget for tyres for a season. So you need to factor in sort of where to spend your money. So one of the products that we're going to be demonstrating in the data analysis course is this little guy here. I'll just get it under our overhead camera so you can have a better look. So this is the AIM Solo 2. This is the DL version, which allows us to integrate lap time. This basically uses GPS for lap timing. It's got a built-in 3-axis G-sensor. It's actually got an inertial measurement unit as well with a yaw-based information in it too. So this will give you your lap time. You can download the data out of it and it will show you track maps as well using GPS. You can get all of the usual information that you'd expect. It'll give you predicted lap time. The other aspect with the DL model is that you can integrate it with the majority of aftermarket standalone ECUs to get the ECU information. So that gives you things like your brake pressure if you're monitoring that, brake position, brake switch I should say, maybe steering position if you're monitoring that, throttle position and engine RPM, 2 key parameters, and some of your other engine data so you can monitor all of that. Now off the top of my head, I think the non-DL model of the Solo 2 starts at about $400 US. So that's a standalone unit. Doesn't allow you to interface with the ECU, but it's also very easy with a suction cup to just put it in a car, temporarily. It's battery powered, or you can hardwire it. So the point here is what we've tried to do is focus on something that is affordable. We think that this unit's at a price point where 2 or 3 friends who are into motorsport could probably chip in and buy the unit and share it between their cars at track days. Of course, once you've got that data, it really doesn't matter if you've got a $3,000 or $4,000 Motec data acquisition system, or you've got the AIM Solo 2 unit at a much cheaper price point. Basically, once you've got that data, all of the analysis packages are very similar. So, long story short, we are developing that data analysis course for racecraft. It's going to be out pretty soon, hopefully within the next couple of months. And we're focusing that on driver and chassis development, not necessarily the engine. So that's why it's with the racecraft project. So look forward to seeing that. At the same time, we are also developing a corner weighting course for our racecraft project as well. So again, we'll jump across to my laptop screen. This is a subtle aspect that I think a lot of people overlook. I know most people who are taking the car to the racetrack understand that the wheel alignment's really important, but the more subtle aspect here as well is that in professional motorsport and semi-professional motorsport, you often see cars sitting on corner weight scales, which is what we've got here. So this is a special scale that sits under each corner of the car. And basically it allows the weight being placed on each corner of the car to be measured. So probably a little bit hard to see here, but that's what we've got here. So left front, that I don't know if you can see that, it says 371.5 kilograms. Total weight there, 1,259 kilograms. What we're trying to do when we are corner weighting a car for circuit racing normally is to do what's called cross weighting. So what we do is we take the left front and the right rear, add those together. The software does this automatically for you, and then present this as a percentage of the total weight. And generally, not always, but generally what we're trying to do is achieve what's called a 50% cross weighting. And the idea behind doing this is if we get the cross weighting 50%, the car should, all things being equal, handle relatively similarly in left and right hand corners. So we're going to be bringing out a course on how to do that. Now, this is probably getting on a little bit, so I'm going to cut this a little bit short. We have also just released, and we've got a release schedule for some more worked examples that are going to our existing courses. For those who were following us towards the end of last year, you'll know that we have added a MegaSquirt MS3 Pro Worked Example into our practical standalone tuning course. This is covering the Mazda Miata or MX-5 platform on an NA6 Mazda Miata. So while it is on the Miata, this is going to be applicable basically to anyone who wants to learn how to tune on the MS3 Pro platform. So that's already available. You'll find it in our practical standalone tuning course. If you already own the course, you already get access to that worked example, no additional cost. We have also just released, as in today, our COBB worked example. We filmed this while we were over at COBB's facility back in November 2019. So this is a worked example on the 2015 Subaru WRX, which runs the FA20 DIT engine. So you'll learn how to optimize the Subaru WRX. This is still applicable to a wider range of Subaru tuning on the COBB platform as well. In particular, you'll see how to use data analysis in order to optimize your tune quickly, how to use the real-time tuning functionality in the COBB platform as well, again, just to speed up your tuning. We have also released our LS, no, we haven't quite. We're about to release our LS worked example, so head across to my laptop screen again. So this is the LS1 that we've been building over the last couple of months. So this is running a K1 Technologies stroker kit. So from 5.7 litres in stock form, it's out to about 6.3 litres. It's got a more aggressive camshaft, and it's got a mild increase in compression as well. So for all of you who are interested in learning about LS tuning, that's going to be perfect for you. That will be probably out by the end of this week if everything goes to schedule. And again, if you already own our practical engine building course, then you're going to get access to that course straight away for no additional cost. Right, lastly, we are running our giveaway that sort of run over the holidays from last year. So we'll just jump across to my laptop screen. This is the giveaway that we're running for our race car craft sister company. So you're going to have the opportunity to win a Watkins Smart String Racing String Alignment Kit along with our Wheel Alignment Fundamentals course so that you'll know what to do with that particular kit. So the Watkins Smart Strings, it includes the strings for producing string wheel alignments. The other aspect we're including with this as well is a Watkins camber gauge so that you can actually measure and adjust your camber on each corner of the car. That will also give you access to our private members only forum over on Racecraft as well. So there's 29 hours left to go to get in the draw for that. So I'd urge you to jump in. Doesn't matter what country you're in, we will ship it all around the world wherever you are. There are also some other options that you can cover off to get more entries into the draw. So jump on that. Not a lot of time left to go, so you might as well get involved. All right, that brings us to the end of our pre-show. Give us a moment here. We'll get set up and we'll get started with our webinar.
If you like that video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already a subscriber, make sure you're subscribed. We release a new video every week. And if you like free stuff, we've got a great deal for you. Click the link in the description to claim your free spot to our next live lesson.